Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're diving into the fascinating world of the Canadian half-dollar coin. It may not show up in your change often, but some of these coins carry real value and incredible history, from rare editions to collectible designs. You won't want to miss what makes this 50-cent piece so special. Let's get started. The 1965 Canadian half-dollar is a notable coin in the history of Canadian currency, representing a transitional era in both design and composition. It was minted during a period of economic change, when many nations, including Canada, were moving away from using silver in their coinage due to rising metal costs. This specific coin, being from 1965, still retained its silver content, making it especially interesting to collectors. On the obverse, the coin features the right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, as designed by Mary Gillick. This version of the Queen shows her wearing a laurel wreath, reflecting a youthful and classical image. The inscription surrounding her portrait reads Elizabeth to Dei Gratia Regina, which translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. In circulated condition, this side of the coin may show light to moderate wear, with potential softening of fine details in the Queen's hair, facial features, and the wreath. The rim may have nicks, and the surface can include small scratches or faint spotting. The reverse of the 1965 Canadian half-dollar is especially striking, displaying the Canadian coat of arms in full detail. This design was used on half-dollars from 1959 through 1966 and was created to reflect Canada's rich heritage. The coat of arms includes elements from England, Scotland, Ireland, and France, representing the country's colonial roots. It features a crowned lion and a unicorn as supporters, with a banner reading Amori Usque ad Mare, the Latin motto, meaning from sea to sea. At the center is a quartered shield, and above it rests the royal crown. In circulated condition, the intricate details of the coat of arms may appear worn, especially in the central shield and the heraldic supporters. High points such as the lion's mane and the unicorn's body often show smoothing due to handling. The words Canada 1965 and 50 cents are inscribed along the edge, which usually remain visible, but may show wear or light fading depending on the level of circulation. This 1965 half-dollar was composed of 80% silver and 20% copper, giving it both a distinct silver luster when new and intrinsic value based on its metal content. The coin weighs 11.66 grams and measures 29.72 millimeters in diameter. It has a reeded edge, which may be partially worn smooth on heavily circulated examples. Because of its silver composition, even circulated coins often retain a slight shine or brightness in protected areas, despite surface marks or discoloration. The specific mention of some dots and the condition being circulated suggests, like corrosion or toning spots, which are common in older silver-based coins. These spots may appear black or brown, and they often occur due to exposure to air, humidity, or acidic environments over time. While they might affect the aesthetic quality, they do not significantly diminish the coin's interest to collectors. Unless the spots are severe, during the 1960s, Canada was undergoing a phase of modernization in its currency system. By 1968, the silver content of the half-dollar was reduced, and coins became primarily nickel-based. Thus, the 1965 issue is one of the last to feature a high silver composition. As such, even circulated examples are often valued for their bullion content alone, in addition to their numismatic appeal. This coin also has relevance in Canadian history beyond its metal composition. The mid-1960s were a period of growing national identity, with the development of distinct Canadian symbols such as the new maple leaf flag in 1965. The continued use of British heraldry on coins like the half-dollar illustrates the connection Canada still had with its colonial past. Even as it moved toward a more distinct cultural identity, collectors interested in 1965 Canadian half-dollars typically look for those with minimal wear and strong detail in the coat of arms. However, circulated examples with natural aging, like The one described are also appreciated as affordable entries into silver coin collecting. These coins are often passed down through families or discovered in older collections, serving as small yet tangible connections to Canada's mid-century history. Even with some wear and spotting, the 1965 Canadian half-dollar remains an enduring and attractive piece of Canadian numismatic history. It symbolizes both the artistic heritage and the changing economic realities of its time, and continues to be collected and admired today. The 1967 Canadian half-dollar coin holds a special place in Canadian numismatic history as part of the country's centennial celebration. In 1967, Canada marked 100 years since Confederation, and to commemorate this milestone, the Royal Canadian Mint issued a special series of coins featuring unique wildlife-themed reverse designs by Canadian artist Alex Colville. These designs replace the traditional imagery for 1 year only and are now recognized as some of the most artistically significant in Canadian coinage. The obverse of the 1967 half-dollar features the familiar effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machen. This portrait shows the Queen wearing a tiara and facing right, with the inscription Elizabeth to D.G. Regina circling the rim. On coins in good condition, the Queen's facial features and crown details remain visible, though signs of light wear or surface contact may be present from handling or circulation. The reverse is what truly distinguishes the 1967 half-dollar. It features a majestic image of a howling wolf, representing the wildness and independence of the Canadian spirit. The design is bold and expressive, capturing the silhouette of the animal in a minimal yet powerful style. The words Canada, 1867 to 1967, and the denomination 50 cents are inscribed around the edge. The simplicity of the artwork, combined with the commemorative dates, gives the coin a clean and elegant appearance. Coins from 1967 were struck in both silver and a silver-nickel alloy. Early strikes from that year contained 80% silver and 20% copper, while later ones were reduced to 50% silver. The difference is not easily visible to the naked eye, but it slightly affects the coin's value to collectors, especially those focusing on silver content. In good circulated condition, like the coin described, the intrinsic silver value still contributes to its appeal, though it's the historical and aesthetic elements that elevate its significance. With a diameter of 29.72 millimeters and a weight of 11.66 grams, the coin has a substantial presence in the hand. It also features a reeded edge, a standard design element for Canadian half-dollars of the era. Coins that are in good condition typically retain much of the original detail, especially in the wolf's outline and the subtle texturing of the fur. While there may be small surface marks, toning, or mild scratches, the design remains clearly recognizable and attractive. The 1967 half-dollar was widely distributed, and while it is not a rare coin in general, its commemorative nature ensures continued interest among collectors. Many coin enthusiasts value it for its place in the Centennial series, which includes distinct designs for every circulating denomination that year, from the 1-cent coin with a rock up to the silver dollar with a Canada goose. Together, they form a cohesive and artfully curated set that celebrates Canada's natural heritage. Owning a 1967 half-dollar in good condition is both a collectible and sentimental experience. It represents a moment of national pride and unity, capturing the cultural and historical identity of a country that was reflecting on a century of growth and change. The wolf, as a symbol, was a fitting choice. Wild, resilient, and deeply tied to the Canadian wilderness, collectors often seek out the full 1967 set or include individual pieces like the half-dollar in albums showcasing Canada's key historical events. Even after decades of circulation, these coins continue to be treasured for their design quality and the era they represent. For those who appreciate commemorative coins with meaning and visual appeal, the 1967 half-dollar is a strong and lasting addition to any collection. Next up we have the 1983 Canadian half-dollar in good condition. Is one of those coins that quietly carries decades of history in its worn edges and familiar face. It's not flashy, it's not rare at first glance. But dig just a little deeper and you'll discover that even a coin like this can have stories worth more than its weight in silver. For collectors, every detail counts: the year, the condition, and sometimes even the secrets left behind by the minting process. And this particular coin may have more to say than meets the eye. In 1983, Canada was in the midst of a new phase in coin production. The silver content that once gave these coins their shimmer and heft had long since been removed. Since 1971, Canadian half dollars had been made of nickel, with earlier versions containing up to 80% silver being phased out. But what makes the 1983 half dollar interesting isn't just its composition. It's how rare it has become in circulation. By the early 1980s, the Royal Canadian Mint was producing fewer half dollars overall. Public demand for the 50-cent piece had declined, and many were simply pulled from use and stored away. That means any half dollar from this era, including the 1983 D, is far less likely to appear in circulation today. In fact, some collectors call this the forgotten denomination. That rarity in daily transactions adds value for numismatists hunting for specific dates and minting variations. Now let's talk about the D. Canadian coins typically do not carry mint marks like their American counterparts. The presence of a D may indicate a counterstamp or an aftermarket edition. It could have been stamped by a private company, a distributor, or for some form of novelty or commemorative purpose. While unofficial, such marks can spark interest among niche collectors, especially if there is a known backstory or connection to a historical event or organization. The condition of this coin is listed as good. That means there is visible wear from circulation, but the main details like the Queen's portrait, the date, and the Canada lettering are still readable and intact. In good condition, the standard 1983 Canadian half dollar might only carry a modest value of around $1 to $3 due to its base metal content and common issue. But certain factors could change that dramatically. One such factor is an error or variety in the minting process. Some Canadian half dollars from the early 1980s have been discovered with interesting mint errors, such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or doubling in the lettering or Queen's features. These mistakes often went unnoticed at the time, and if found now, even on a worn coin, they could increase the value to $20, $50, or even hundreds of dollars depending on severity and clarity. Collectors are especially interested in examples that show misaligned dies or coins struck on the wrong planchet. While rare, these kinds of errors have turned ordinary-looking coins into sought-after collectibles. Imagine spotting a slightly oversized or undersized half dollar, only to find it was struck on a blank intended for a different denomination, or even a foreign coin. Those types of coins have fetched hundreds, sometimes over $1,000 at auction. Another point to consider is that in the early 1980s, the Royal Canadian Mint experimented with its finishes and striking pressure. Some coins from this period feature unusually strong or weak strikes due to adjustments in minting equipment. A strong strike with crisp detail and minimal post-mint damage could push a coin like this into collector interest zones, especially if it has an odd finish or unexpected weight. Now think about the timing. The 1980s weren't just a shift in metal content or production volume. It was a period when coin collecting was changing too, with fewer people using half dollars and more focusing on commemorative issues. Circulation coins like this started quietly disappearing from pocket change. Today, finding one in decent condition is more difficult than you might expect, especially outside of Canada. So while this 1983 D Canadian half dollar may not scream rare at first glance, its scarcity in circulation, potential for minting quirks, and the curiosity around that unusual D mark make it far more than just pocket change. For those who know what to look for, this coin might just be a small gateway into a forgotten chapter of Canadian minting history, and just when you think it can't get more intriguing than 1968 Canadian half-dollar in circulated condition might look like just another worn piece of silver history, the kind that might slip through your fingers without a second thought. But wait, 1968 wasn't just any year for Canadian coins. It marked a seismic shift in how the Royal Canadian Mint produced its currency. And because of that transition, this very coin could be one of two dramatically different versions, one worth just a few dollars, and the other? Potentially hundreds, even more, depending on condition and material. Yes, this coin may be circulating among us, but its true value might still be hiding in plain sight. Let's start with what makes the year 1968 so special. It was the final year that Canadian half-dollars were made with any silver at all. But here's the twist. Not all 1968 Canadian half-dollars were created equal. Some were struck in 50% silver and 50% copper, while others were made entirely from nickel. And there's no mint mark on most of them to tell you which is which, so how can you tell what you've got? With a magnet, seriously, silver coins are not magnetic, while the nickel versions are. It's that simple and that important. If this 1968 half-dollar sticks to a magnet, then it's the nickel version, and its value is mostly sentimental or collectible, typically worth around $1 or $2 in circulated condition. But if it doesn't stick, that's where things get exciting. You may be holding one of the rare 50% silver issues. Even in circulated condition like this one, the melt value alone for the silver content can push it to $6 to $10, depending on the market. But if the coin has a clean strike, minimal damage, or signs of unique minting traits, the value can jump significantly. Some silver versions of the 1968 half-dollar have sold for $40 to $80 in better grades, with high-end examples graded MS65 or above crossing the $150 threshold. But that's just the beginning. There's another detail that makes this coin particularly desirable to collectors: transitional errors. You see, because 1968 was a crossover year, the minting process wasn't entirely smooth. Some silver plankets meant for 1967 coins were mistakenly used in 1968, and vice versa. This created a very rare type of transitional error coin. For example, a small batch of 1968 half-dollars was struck on the wrong planchet, sometimes on blanks meant for quarters, or on 80% silver plankets left over from previous years. These rare mistakes are worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. One verified transitional error with a silver content of 80%, struck with a 1968 die, sold at auction for more than $1,200. Other error types have also been discovered on this coin. A few 1968 half-dollars showed doubling on the coin's profile or let during a condition known as double die obverse. These errors are subtle but valuable. One double die example in extremely fine condition fetched nearly $900 in a private collector sale. And then there are the few off-center strikes and clipped plankets that somehow made it past quality control. These are much rarer, but when found, they can bring in serious offers from collectors chasing unique minting mistakes from this pivotal year. But what about the D on this coin? Many collectors might wonder about that, because Canadian coins typically don't feature mint marks. In fact, if there is a D visible, it might not actually be from the mint. It could be a counterstamp or a post-mint mark added later, either for novelty, export, or resale purposes. These counterstamped coins often generate curiosity and may add minor collector value, especially if they are tied to a specific event or company. However, it's essential to confirm whether the D is official or aftermarket. An official mint error would be far more valuable than a novelty stamp. So, while this 1968 D Canadian half-dollar may show its age, don't be too quick to dismiss it. There's still so much potential packed into that little piece of metal. Whether it's a silver version hiding in plain sight, a misstrike with a rich backstory, or a transitional error worth hundreds, this coin captures a unique moment in Canadian minting history. It represents the end of the silver era and the beginning of modern coinage. all in one single year. That's why collectors are always on the hunt for this specific year. It's not just a coin, it's a symbol of change, of decisions made behind the scenes at the Royal Canadian Mint, and of the kind of human error that sometimes leads to incredible collector windfalls. And just when you think you've heard it all, the next coin takes things to a whole new level. It's a piece that once flew under the radar but now commands five-figure prices due to one of the boldest minting oversights in North American coin history.
Next up we have
the 1971 Canadian half-dollar coin, part of the country's long-running series of 50-cent pieces, is a coin that continues the traditional design featuring Canada's national coat of arms, while not as commonly encountered in everyday circulation. Today, this coin reflects a time when larger denomination coins were more actively used in transactions. The 1971 issue carries forward the design and dimensions introduced in previous decades, serving as a link between older, silver-based coinage and more modern, base metal currency. On the obverse, the coin bears the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II. By 1971, the portrait had been updated from the earlier youthful version to a more mature depiction. This updated design, by Arnold Machen, shows the Queen wearing a tiara and facing right. The inscription surrounding the portrait reads Elizabeth to D.G. Regina, which is Latin for Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. In circulated condition, the portrait may display signs of wear, especially on the high points, such as the Queen's cheek, hair, and crown. Light scratches or smooth areas may be visible depending on how much the coin has been handled. The reverse side of the coin features the Canadian coat of arms, an intricate and symbolic design that highlights the historical and cultural roots of Canada. It includes the quartered shield with symbols of England, 3 lions, Scotland, lion rampant, Ireland, harp, and France, fleur-de-lis, topped by the royal crown. The shield is flanked by a lion holding a Union Jack flag and a unicorn holding the flag of Royal France. Beneath the coat of arms is a scroll with the national motto, Amori usque ad mare, which means from sea to sea. The legend Canada 1971 and 50 cents encircle the bottom. Due to circulation, the fine details of the coat of arms, especially in the supporters, shield, and the crown, may show signs of flattening. The inscriptions generally remain legible, although light wear and minor discoloration are expected in a circulated coin of this age. Surface marks such as bag marks, edge nicks, or general dulling of the original mint luster are also common in this condition. The 1971 half-dollar is composed of 100% nickel, weighing approximately 8.1 grams and measuring 27.13 millimeters in diameter. Unlike earlier issues made of silver prior to 1968, this coin has a more magnetic composition with a slightly different luster and feel. The switch from silver to nickel occurred as part of broader economic changes affecting coin production, particularly in response to rising silver prices and the need for more durable and cost-effective metals. Nickel coins, like the 1971 half-dollar, tend to age differently than silver ones. Over time, the surface can develop a matte finish or acquire light spotting due to oxidation. Nickel is also harder than silver, so while it resists deep scratches more effectively, it often accumulates more minor abrasions from handling. The reeded edge typically remains well-defined unless the coin has been heavily worn or improperly stored. Although not a rare coin by mintage, the 1971 Canadian half-dollar is less commonly seen in daily circulation today. Many of these coins were pulled from change and saved in drawers or collections due to their unusual size and historical appeal. Their larger size and heraldic reverse make them visually striking, particularly for collectors interested in Canadian coinage or national symbolism. While half-dollar coins continue to be issued by the Royal Canadian Mint, they are not regularly used in everyday transactions, and production numbers are significantly lower than for smaller denominations. This has increased the numismatic interest in earlier dates like 1971, especially those in higher grades or with unique toning. In summary, the 1971 Canadian half-dollar coin in circulated condition offers a solid representation of Canada's mid-20th century numismatic design. It bridges the transition from silver to base metal coinage and maintains traditional imagery through the continued use of the coat of arms. While its value in circulated condition remains modest, the coin holds historical significance and aesthetic appeal, particularly for those who appreciate Canadian history and classic coin designs. The 1970 for Canadian half-dollar in circulated condition without a mint mark might not turn heads at first glance, but this unassuming coin holds deeper significance than many realize. While it may look like just another old coin from the past, collectors who understand its context and potential know better. This particular piece represents the continued evolution of Canadian coinage following the transition away from silver content. And while it may not contain precious metal like its predecessors, its value lies in rarity, design integrity, minting anomalies, and the historical shift it embodies. By 1974, the Royal Canadian Mint had fully embraced the use of nickel in its half-dollar coins. Gone were the days of silver-infused coinage, a move that began in 1968 and was completed in the early 1970s. That means this 1970 for half-dollar is composed of pure nickel, giving it a distinct weight and shine when compared to earlier silver issues. While this shift was intended to make coin production more economical, it also led to a number of interesting quirks, especially in how the coins were minted and struck. The obverse of the coin features the right-facing profile of Queen Elizabeth II, wearing a tiara, a standard design used throughout the 1970s. The reverse features the Canadian coat of arms, with detailed imagery that includes the lion, unicorn, maple leaves, and the Latin motto. On well-preserved coins, this design is remarkably detailed, with fine lines that showcase the skill of the engravers. Even in circulated condition like this one, many of those details can still be seen, though signs of wear are expected around. The high points and edges. Now here's where things get interesting. Although this coin does not contain silver, its collectible value can still climb due to factors like condition, rarity of strike, and most importantly, minting errors. During the 1970s, the Royal Canadian Mint was dealing with high production demands and changes in coin metal composition. As a result, occasional errors slipped through quality control. These included off-center strikes, die cracks, double strikes, and even misaligned dies. In the case of the 1970 for half-dollar, some errors included doubling in the date numerals and rim misalignments. These errors, while rare, have been documented and sought after by collectors. One particular example of a 1970 for Canadian half-dollar with a prominent double strike across the Queen's profile, parts of the reverse fetched nearly $600 at auction. The coin was in better than average condition, but still showed evidence of circulation. Another piece with a noticeable die crack running through the coat of arms design sold privately to a collector for nearly $400. These aren't just flukes, they're proof that even common-looking coins can hold surprising value. You know what to look for. Even in standard form, 1970 for half-dollars in brilliant uncirculated condition have been sold for $40 to $80 depending on eye appeal and grading. Coins that achieve a grade of MS65 or higher can sometimes climb above $100. While this circulated coin would not reach those heights, it is still worth inspecting closely for possible doubling, minting anomalies, or unusual weight or texture. Another detail worth noting is the potential for planchet errors. A few 1970 for half-dollars were found struck on undersized or improperly prepared blanks, resulting in thinner coins or those with incomplete design impressions. These errors, though extremely scarce, have turned up in dealer lots and estate collections. When verified, they have sold for over $1,000 in some cases. So while this 1970 for Canadian half-dollar might seem like just a leftover piece of loose change from the mid-70s, it's far more than that. It's a physical reminder of Canada's changing economy, minting technology, and the transition into modern numismatics. For collectors, it offers a chance to dig deeper into a year that many overlook. With the right set of circumstances, even A circulated example like this can reveal hidden potential. It's a classic example of why it pays to look twice at old coins. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries are the ones that don't shine the brightest. And just when you think you've seen everything, the next coin in this series might just break all expectations. It's a piece from a decade that redefined coin production and introduced an era so bold, its discovery shocked even the most seasoned collectors. What happened during the minting of this next coin led to values climbing into the five-figure range almost overnight. Stay with us, because what's coming up next could change how you see everyday pocket change forever.
Next up we have
The 1973 Canadian half-dollar coin without a mint mark, in circulated condition, is a commemorative issue that holds both historical and numismatic interest. Unlike most regular coinage, this particular year's 50-cent piece marks the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police (RCMP), making it one of the more recognizable and collectible half-dollars produced by the Royal Canadian Mint. The obverse features the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machen. This portrait was used on Canadian coins from 1965 to 1989 and shows the Queen wearing a tiara, facing right. Around the edge is the Latin inscription Elizabeth to D.G. Regina, which translates to Elizabeth II by the grace of God, Queen. In circulated condition, this side may show wear, particularly on the facial features and hair detail, but the overall likeness remains identifiable. The reverse design of the 1973 half-dollar is what sets it apart. Instead of the usual Canadian coat of arms, this coin displays an image of a mounted RCMP officer in full ceremonial dress. The rider is shown upright on a horse, facing left, with a lance held vertically in his right hand. The horse is well detailed, and beneath it are the dates 1873 to 1973, commemorating a century of the RCMP's service to Canada. Around the edge are the words Canada and 50 cents. The initials of the designer, Paul Cederberg, appear near the base of the design. The coin is composed of nickel, as silver had been removed from circulating half-dollars after 1967. It weighs 6.9 grams and has a diameter of 27.13 millimeters. Its edge is reeded, and like most Canadian coins of the period, it was minted in Ottawa, hence the absence of a visible mint mark, which is typical for Canadian circulation coins. Being in circulated condition means the coin has passed through everyday transactions and shows visible signs of handling. This includes surface scratches, smoothing of the finer details, and possibly some discoloration or dulling of the metal. For the 1973 RCMP half-dollar, high points like the horse's mane, the officer's face and uniform, and the Queen's portrait are usually the first areas to show wear. Even so, the coin remains fully legible and its design recognizable, making it a worthy addition to a circulated collection or as a historical reference piece. The 1973 RCMP half-dollar was issued in both regular and special collector formats. The circulation version, such as this one, was minted in large quantities. While not particularly rare, it has become increasingly less common in everyday circulation due to its commemorative nature and because the 50-cent denomination has not been widely used in Canada since the 1970s, as many of these coins were set aside by collectors or the general public upon release due to their unique design. In terms of value, circulated examples of the 1973 half-dollar typically have modest monetary worth, generally ranging from face value up to a few dollars depending on condition. However, their real value lies in their cultural and historical importance. They mark a key anniversary for one of Canada's most iconic national institutions, the RCMP, and reflect the style and sentiment of early 1970s commemorative coinage. Collectors often appreciate this coin for its distinctive imagery and the way it breaks from the standard series. The mounted police design is among the most recognized motifs in Canadian coin history, and it stands as a reminder of the country's law enforcement legacy and the symbolism the RCMP holds in Canadian identity. For long-term preservation, Even a circulated coin like this one benefits from proper storage. Keeping it in a 2x2 cardboard coin holder or a protective plastic capsule will prevent further wear and environmental damage. It's important to avoid cleaning circulated coins, as this can lower their value and obscure their original details. In conclusion, the 1973 Canadian half-dollar commemorating the centennial of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police is more than just a coin, it's a piece of national heritage. While it may be worn from circulation, it still tells a story of service, tradition, and Canadian pride. Its distinctive design and unique place in Canada's numismatic history make it a valuable item for collectors who appreciate coins not just for their metal, but for the meaning they carry.
Next up we have
the 1970 Canadian half-dollar coin, also known as the 50-cent piece, is a notable and somewhat underappreciated part of Canada's coinage. Minted by the Royal Canadian Mint and bearing the D to indicate it was part of a specific production run, though Canadian coins typically do not use mint marks in the same way as American coins, so this D might refer to a specific collector's notation or variety. This coin represents a time when half-dollars were still produced regularly, although they were already seeing less use in everyday commerce. The coin features a distinctive design and was struck in nickel, a change from the previous silver compositions used in earlier decades. On the obverse of the 1970 Canadian half-dollar, we see the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, which was designed by Arnold Machen. This version of the Queen's portrait shows her wearing a tiara and facing right. Around the portrait are the words Elizabeth to DG Regina, an abbreviation of the Latin phrase Dei Gratia Regina, which means by the grace of God, Queen. This depiction of the Queen was common on Canadian coins during that era and reflects Canada's continued ties to the British monarchy. The reverse of the coin features the coat of arms of Canada, a highly detailed and symbolic design. The arms include several national and royal symbols, such as the lion, unicorn, fleur-de-lis, and maple leaves, all surrounding a central shield and supported by a scroll bearing the motto Amori Usque ad Mare, which translates to from sea to sea. This side of the coin also includes the words Canada and 50 cents, along with the date 1972. The design reflects the history, heritage, and national identity of Canada, and it is one of the more intricate coin reverses in circulation. By 1972, Canadian half-dollars were minted primarily for collectors rather than for general circulation. Although they remained legal tender and could be used in commerce, they were seldom seen in daily use. Most Canadians found little practical use for the 50-cent denomination, which contributed to its decline in circulation. However, the coin was still produced regularly throughout the 1970s, and many examples remain today in good condition, especially those that were saved by collectors or included in proof and mint sets. The 1970 Canadian half-dollar was composed of nickel, a departure from the 80% silver composition used prior to 1968. The coin has a diameter of 27.13 millimeters and a weight of 6.9 grams. Its reeded edge and bright nickel color give it a distinctive appearance among Canadian coinage. The hardness of nickel also means that many of these coins, even if circulated, retain decent detail and exhibit fewer scratches compared to their silver predecessors. A coin in good condition from this year typically still shows strong details in the Queen's portrait and the coat of arms, though there may be minor signs of wear, light scratches, or faint dulling of the surface from handling and circulation. For collectors, the 1970 half-dollar is not considered rare, but it is part of an increasingly collectible series, especially as the 50-cent coin becomes more scarce in circulation. People often collect them as part of complete Canadian coin sets or out of interest in the Canadian monarchy and historical symbolism. Coins in very good or uncirculated condition, particularly those from mint sets, tend to be more desirable. Caring for a 1970 Canadian half-dollar in good condition involves basic coin preservation techniques. It is best to store the coin in a dry, stable environment, away from humidity and extreme temperature changes. Placing the coin in a plastic coin flip, 2x2 holder, or an archival safe coin album and help prevent scratches and further wear. Handling the coin by its edges is also recommended to avoid oils from the skin affecting the metal's surface. While the coin may not hold significant monetary value above face value in circulated condition, it does possess educational and historical worth. It offers insight into Canadian national identity, numismatic design evolution, and mid-20th century minting practices. For those with a broader interest in Commonwealth coinage, it also provides a connection to the era of Queen Elizabeth II's reign and the shared imagery that appears across coins from the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, and other nations within the Commonwealth. The Canadian 50-cent piece continues to attract attention from niche collectors and those who appreciate the artistry and national symbolism of coinage. Even though fewer of these coins are produced today and they are not commonly seen in everyday cash transactions, they remain legal tender and are a lasting testament to Canada's heritage. A 1972 example in good condition is a respectable and valuable piece in any collection, not necessarily for its market price, but for its ability to tell a story of national pride, royal legacy, and the evolving nature of coin usage in Canada. Now here we have something quite different and truly intriguing, a 1967 Canadian half-dollar in good condition with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks simple, straightforward, just another piece of older pocket change from north of the border. But if you know what to look for, this coin can turn into something much more than a 50-cent piece. This could be the coin that sends collectors into a frenzy and sparks a value that climbs not just into the hundreds, but well into the thousands under the right conditions. Let's start with a little background. The 1967 Canadian half-dollar was released as part of Canada's centennial celebration marking 100 years since Confederation. That alone gives it historical weight. The Royal Canadian Mint released a special series of coins that year, each featuring wildlife rather than the traditional designs. For the half-dollar, they chose a majestic howling valve captured mid-call against a clean, bold background. It is one of the most haunting and striking designs in Canadian coinage history, and it was only minted for that 1 year. That alone makes it a favorite for collectors. But here's where it gets interesting. This coin was struck in 80% silver and 20% copper. That silver content alone gives it base value due to its melt price. Even a worn circulated piece like this one holds value just because of the silver. In today's market, that melt value alone is often over $10, but melt value is just the beginning. Some 1967 half-dollars can reach values that shock even experienced collectors. You see, during the mid to late 1960s, Canada was transitioning away from silver coinage. The 1967 series was right on the edge of that change, and because of the high demand and rush production, mistakes happened. Some coins were double struck. Others were struck with partial collars, creating strange shapes or misaligned images. One rare 1967 half-dollar with an off-center strike and clear doubling on the valve snout sold for over $2,000. It looked strange, wild, almost like a ghost image on the coin. But that was no mistake in the eyes of collectors. It was a treasure. Even more surprising, some coins from that year have been found struck on the wrong planchet. There are reports of 1967 half-dollars struck on quarter blanks or blanks intended for foreign coins produced by the Canadian Mint. These errors are extremely rare, but when discovered, they can command prices well over $5,000. That is no exaggeration. A coin that most people would overlook might be worth a small fortune if the weight or diameter is just slightly off. And then there is the matter of condition. This specific coin is in good condition, meaning it shows wear but still retains clear detail. That is important because collectors will pay significantly more for coins that show clean details, especially in the valve sphere and the raised lead earring. Even circulated coins can sell for $30 to $50 if they are clean enough. Uncirculated examples, those graded MS65 and above, can easily go for $150 to $300, and the highest grades near mint perfection have crossed $1,000 at auction. But the real shock value comes when a rare error coin combines with high-grade condition. That is the collector's dream. In one auction, a 1967 Canadian half dollar with a full double strike error in MS-67 sold for over $8,000. Think about that, a half dollar from 1967 selling for more than a luxury vacation. And the only reason someone even found it was because they looked twice. That's what makes coins like this so thrilling. They remind us that history hides in plain sight. This was pocket change once. Something someone probably used to buy a cup of coffee in 1968, and now it could be the key to a collection worth more than gold. The mystery, the potential, the sheer unpredictability of value, that is what keeps collectors hooked. So the next time you find a coin like this, do not dismiss it. Look closely. Examine the edges, the weight, the surface for any signs of misalignment or doubling. That tiny detail could turn a regular coin into a jaw-dropping prize, and the best part is this is just one example, because the coin coming next takes things even further. It was minted during another massive transition year, a time of economic shift and minting confusion. And one error from that batch has sold for more than most people's entire coin collections. Combined, what kind of mistake could possibly do that? The answer will leave you stunned. The 1965 Canadian half dollar may seem like a plain old piece of change from a bygone era, but this circulated coin holds a story deeper than most realize. With no mint mark and a worn finish from years of use, it might appear to be just another 50-cent piece from the mid-60s, but for collectors in the know, this coin stands at the edge of a massive shift in Canadian coinage history, and some examples have revealed values that are truly shocking. What looks like just a circulated half dollar could turn out to be a rare treasure worth hundreds or even thousands under the right circumstances. To understand why the 1965 Canadian half dollar is so important, we have to look at the bigger picture. This was a year of major transition. Just like the United States, around this time Canada was moving away from high silver content in its coins. Before 1967, Canadian coins, like the half dollar, were composed of 80% silver. After 1967, that started to change as the mint shifted toward lower silver and eventually nickel compositions. That makes the 1965 version part of the last full wave of silver half dollars before the changes took over completely. And that silver content gives every 1965 half dollar a solid base value. Even in worn condition, the melt value alone can reach over $10 depending on the market. But melt value is only the beginning. In 1965, more than 9 million half dollars were produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, so at face value it seems like there would be plenty of these around. But here is where things get interesting. That year the mint was under pressure to keep up with rising demand. As a result, multiple varieties of the 1965 half dollar were produced using different dies. Some had small beads around the queen's portrait, while others had large beads. Some showed a pointed tip on the queen's bust, while others had a blunt version. These minor design variations have become a major focus for collectors because certain combinations are much harder to find than others. For example, the small beads blunt tip variety is considered the rarest. In top condition, that coin can fetch hundreds of dollars from serious collectors. There are even reports of sales over $1,000 for near mint examples with the rare die pairing. These varieties were only discovered by collectors years after the coins were released, which means many may still be sitting in drawers or changed jars waiting to be found. On top of that, some 1965 half dollars were struck with slight misalignments or double strikes. These mint errors often went unnoticed at the time, but have become highly sought after today. A double-struck 1965 half dollar showing a faint second image of the queen or the reverse design can bring in well over $500. And if that error coin is in high grade, the value can jump into the thousands. Another known error involves coins that were struck slightly off-center. In these cases, the rim is uneven and part of the design might be cut off. These coins are rare, but not impossible to find. One collector discovered such a piece in an old family coin jar, and it later sold for over $800 at auction. Even the regular non-error versions of the 1965 half-dollar in pristine condition can bring strong prices. Coins graded MS65 or higher have reached up to $200, especially when they show full luster and no visible wear. That means if your coin has clear details, minimal scratches, and strong edges, it could be worth far more than its face value. Now let us turn our attention to the specific coin in question. This one is circulated showing signs of use, but still retains a good amount of detail. That already puts its silver value at around $10 to $12, but if it turns out to be one of the rarer varieties with small beads and a blunt tip, or it shows even a faint trace of a mint error, that value could grow dramatically. It is worth checking the details closely with a magnifier or having it evaluated by a professional, because here is the shocking truth. Even a coin as common-looking as this one can hide rare variations that only a handful of people ever find. And when they do, those discoveries can lead to serious payouts and an incredible story. So never underestimate a coin just because it is old or a little worn. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary can be as small as a few beads or a tiny shift in the design. And just when you think that is impressive, get ready. The next coin in our journey comes from a year when the mint was overwhelmed. Trying to fix a serious production issue, a few wild mistakes slipped through, and what happened to those coins has stunned the collecting world ever since. Stay with us because what is coming next will make you look at every coin in your pocket.